Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Dorit, and I'm going to totally botch saying your last name. Palvanov?
Yes.
Okay,
No, you're good.
I'm close. So Dorit is everything feminine. I just absolutely love what we were just talking about before hitting record. So you guys are in for a real treat today. I met Dorit, I think it's been 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
I think we're coming up on 3 years. She was a mutual mastermind buddy in a group that we were in, and it's so crazy how much has happened in the last 3 years. So I'm excited to learn a little bit about what you've been up to and what you can offer this audience. So I'll let you take the floor. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sasha, for having me. Congratulations on your beautiful new green desk in the office. So my name is Dorit Palvanov. I'm a wife. I'm a mama. I have 3 girls. And in terms of what I do for work is I am a registered holistic nutritionist, and I help women to infuse more of their feminine energy into their healing journey. And so I work with ambitious women to find their flow so that they can be successful at work without sacrificing their relationships and the health of their body and all of that. So, and even if you are someone who, stays at home, it's still, I think, so important for us to understand that it is up to us to find our rhythm, our cycle, our flow, so that life doesn't feel hard anymore. And so that's kind of like a little summary of what I do.
I love that. So I know that I learned this from you, and I'm not a super genius when it comes to it, but it is something that I've talked to the women in my community about. Certain times of the month will bring on certain energies, and you can support that energy with different foods and different, I'm not even sure what the word I'm looking for is. So can you kind of tell us about that? And then we're going to get into a whole lot more after that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So first of all, before we get into the energy, we need to understand that this whole, like when a client comes to me, when a woman begins working with me, she comes to me because there's something really painful. So most of my clients come to me because they are struggling with something, physical. So whether she has thyroid conditions, hormonal imbalances, severe acne, brain fog, she just doesn't feel her best. Or it could be because she feels like her relationships are really not there. Like women who have a very low libido, women who struggle in their parenting journey, who just cannot, who feel like since they have become moms, they've just disengaged from themselves. They've kind of lost themselves. So right there and then, what I see is it's kind of like this woman has been checked out of life. It's like she's been on an autopilot. And what I do with my clients is I help them to create a different relationship with time. So we can have a mindset of, time is linear, and there is 24 hours in a day, and every time slot, if you're thinking about your calendar, right? So between 12 to 1, this is my lunchtime, and this is when I pick up the kids, and this is when I'm gonna, this is the time I have allocated for work. It's very linear. It's very masculine in a sense. And the other way to approach time, it's called Cronus time. And that is kind of more of like timelessness. I'm going to give you an example, Sasha. So 5 minutes, right? They can be, it's 5 minutes. Let's say today, the 5 minutes that it took me to prepare my cup of tea. Okay. 5 minutes versus the first 5 minutes, when I held my baby after she was born. So those 5 minutes, it's the same time in terms of quantitatively speaking, it's the same time, but it feels so much different, right? There is like this, it's like time stops, and you feel like you're fully immersed in that present moment. And so this is what I mean by creating a life of flow, creating a life, designing a life for yourself that feels like you are more in this Cronus time as opposed to in the the grind kind of time. Does it make sense?
No, I absolutely love this. And I feel like, and I knew the concept of linear versus chronos, but I not to like the extent of what you're explaining. And when you say this, I very much feel like I live in a world of chronos time, because everybody gives me crap that I'm on Sasha time, like just linear time, like, oh, be here at 12 o'clock. And I know we have to do certain things like that as part as like active members of society, but I very much live in like my own world, my own time zone. So there's a word for it, and I'm loving this. So tell me more.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm just the same like you. Sometimes I feel like I'm disengaged from life, and there are like pros and cons to this, but really the point is that it's like life sometimes feels like it's too rushed for me, like too rushed, too the pace is too much, and it's just my nervous system is too sensitive for that. So that is the reason why I even began exploring and learning this. And now all of those things, whether it is living in a life of flow, slowing down, designing your schedule, your work schedule, your family life, the way you approach life, right, your relationship with time, all of those skills coupled with communication skills, coupled with just a more compassionate, more kind way to live your life, whether it is the relationship that you're fostering with your kids or with your partner. Like it's a whole umbrella of things. And by the way, yesterday I had a meeting and someone referred to those skills, and she was from like a very corporate world, and she said, yeah, but those soft skills, they're not indispensable in the corporate setting. And I thought, oh my gosh, how wrong is that? How wrong is that? So those, these quote unquote soft skills is what I call living, engaging your feminine energy. Because the majority of us, we live in a world where masculine energy, it's the energy of go, 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 get, can I use language that is not appropriate here?
You absolutely can drop any sort of language you want. Just be you.
Okay. Get shit done, go, 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 achieving, producing, efficiency. Like all those things are amazing, 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 but just not all the time. Not all the time. And the beauty here, especially for you, if you're a female, our body, the way it was designed biologically, it was designed with this in mind, meaning it's like your health coach, your best health coach is your body. And just the fact that your body is created in a cyclical form, and we're going to talk about, our period and our cycle, that on its own is already a huge, what's the word? It's like, we're encoded for this from the first, day we are, we show up into this planet, right? It's very much different than a male's biology system, because
is it true? I was going to say, because I believe that, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do think somebody said that women's bodies are cyclical in nature, whereas like a man, with that masculine energy, their bodies reset every 24 hours.
Right. So that means men's cycle too. It's just that their cycle, it culminates every 24 hours, right? Because this is where it's really fascinating. It's because male's biology responds to the sun versus female biology responds to the moon. Now the moon is on a 24-hour cycle, right? So because male's biology responds, so in the male's main hormone that is known and famous for being the male hormone is testosterone, and testosterone responds to the sun. So the sun is up, testosterone is up. Sun goes down, testosterone goes down. By the way, think about the 9-to-5 workday. It's designed to accommodate the male's energy system,
This
right?
is totally blowing my mind right now. I'm loving this. Keep going.
Right, it's amazing. Versus the female regeneration and restoration system, our cycle culminates every roughly 28 days. So it's very similar to how the moon cycles. So the moon also has 4 phases, and the moon the moon cycle culminates every 29 and a half days roughly. Like that's the it's never like a concrete number. It's always averages when we talk about those things. So if you have a regular cycle, if you have a regular period, for sure it applies. But if you're a woman who doesn't have a period for whatever reason, you may be pregnant, you might be postmenopausal, you might be, a woman who had a hysterectomy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you don't cycle anymore. It's just that you don't have that internal rhythm. However, you very much are still, aligned and respond to the phases and the changes of the moon. Now, this is not woo-woo. This is not woo-woo. This is not something that it's like for the enlightened ones. No. Like when I learned this, and I come from a world, like I come from, the holistic nutrition. I come from, the perspective of, our health journey, and from like women's health perspective. This is the most sustainable framework there is in the world for us women to really take care of ourselves. So I know that, self-care is thrown out there like, it's nonstop, right? We talk about this, but really when I work with a client, what I see, it's with 100% of my clients, is that we don't know how to take care of ourselves. We just don't. We think we know. We think that self-care is, getting a manicure done, or getting your hair done, or getting a massage. Those things are beautiful, but this is not the kind of self-care I talk about here. So if you want, we can dive deeper into, yeah? Okay, I see you nodding. Okay. So when it comes to self-care, from that, perspective of really finding your cycle, finding your rhythm, it's understanding your biology as a woman. So we already know that we cycle, and we know that we're, aligned with the moon. Now, what does this mean, on a deeper level? First of all, we need to understand that the menstrual cycle, we all hear about the period, and so the period, it's thought of as being like the main event. It's the most visible event. I mean, you can see it, but it's not the only thing that is happening. What's happening is you are on a cycle for 28 days, depending on how long or short your cycle is, okay? So, and what's happening is that your hormones are changing constantly. So if you think about, there are 4 different, very distinct phases in the menstrual cycle. And what happens, what changes, each one of them is every one of those phases, you are being injected a different cocktail of hormones that you will feel different emotionally. You will feel different in terms of, your cravings for food are going to be different. You're going to feel different in terms of how you want to, move your body, in terms of how you want to socialize. Like all of those things are going to change because due to these different infusions of hormones. So let's begin with the first phase. The first phase is the follicular phase. So that's roughly, and when I talk about the menstrual cycle, I know, like I said, we're averaging things out just for the sake of simplicity. So every one of the phases is roughly about a week long. It can be longer than that. It can be shorter than that. And when I work with clients, I really teach them to tune in and to find, there's something that is called crossover days. And you can actually feel them in your body. It's mind blowing. But basically the follicular phase is going to be roughly about 5 to 6 days after your period. So that's when your estrogen is starting to rise back up. And your progesterone is starting to kind of like stabilize, in the body. And as a result of that, you will start feeling like a rush of energy, almost like anxiousness kind of, I refer this as the time when your inner teenager is being reawakened. You might be super like excited to do things, to try new things. It's a great time to like experiment with maybe a new hobby or to try something new. It's the time of newness, you know, in your cycle. It's also known as the phase of emergence. And if you think about this, one really amazing system that I've heard, I think Kate Northrup talks about this. She talks about the phases and she compares them to the seasons. So the follicular phase will be very similar to the springtime, right? So that's when things are just like budding up and things are just beginning to emerge after like a deep, you know, quiet sleep, which is the winter. So that's the energy of the follicular phase. Do you want me to talk about food a little bit and movement? Okay. So in terms of food, because we're starting to emerge from menstruation, your body, and pay really close attention to it, because most of us are already intuitive eaters. But like now that you know this, start paying attention. What foods do you crave during the time when you're in your follicular phase? So you will crave foods that are mostly fresh, not cooked so much. So maybe salads, great time for green juices, for green smoothies, you know, foods that are very hot, that are higher in their life force, as opposed to in the different phases. In terms of movement, because you're getting this rush of energy, it's almost like you're being back from the dead. That's how it feels. That's the language my clients use when they describe how it feels. It's like you're like finally excited to, you know, to just be back. So because of that, your body would start to want to engage in higher intensity classes, maybe, you know, running or doing some, you know, higher weights, that sort of thing, right? And as a smart woman who wants to live sustainably and who wants to help her body to, you know, to recalibrate each one of the phases, what you do is you listen. You don't push yourself too hard, right? At the same time, you also don't give yourself, you know, too much of a leeway, because you know that now it's not the time to rest. Now it's time to, you know, to be there and show up in the world in a bigger way. The next phase is the phase of ovulation. So it's going to be roughly day 14. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention that when it comes to numbers, when it comes to tracking your period, the first day of your period is going to be day 1, and so on and so forth until the next cycle. So the ovulation day is going to be roughly day 14. And so that is the time when you would feel the most magnetic, the happiest, because what happens is your brain, your left and right hemisphere are going to be in a position where you have the most verbal capacity. So you will be able to communicate so much better. You would find yourself smiling much more. You would find yourself wanting to maybe put some earrings on or let your hair down or wear like a nice, you know, feminine maybe dress or a skirt, like something feminine. And those things are, again, they're done mostly intuitively. I do those things now that I understand. I do them consciously. But the more, you know, the more you lean into the system, the more you begin feeling, oh my gosh, like I am a woman, I'm a female and I rock. It's like you own your femininity, right? And that, by the way, is spilled over your relationship. It's spilled into your sex life that become, oh my gosh, like triple X, much more amazing. It spills into your parenting because your kids see you in your power. They also see you resting. So, right, mommy is not constantly like, oh, you know, killing herself over and just is. It's like my daughter uses. We have this kind of language. And by the way, I'm not inventing this. My daughter came up with this on her own. So I have 3 daughters. My 10-year-old, she's very highly intuitive, and she has such amazing capacity to explain and express feelings. So she decided that there are some women, she already as a young girl, she notices the difference between different types of women. So she says, there are some women who are just fun and happy. But there are other women's mommy, she refers to her teachers, that are just squeezed. They're always red and they just feel like they're squeezed. Like that's the word that she used, right? So that's exactly it. When you feel squeezed, when you feel sucked dry, it's a very strong indication that you are not living in a flow. You're not in a flow. When things just feel hard and you're feeling like you're swimming against the current, right? And I believe that this is not the purpose of life. The purpose, yes, we're supposed to work hard and we're supposed to achieve things and we're supposed to put ourselves outside of our comfort zone, but it's not sustainable to be felt like that all the freaking time. Okay. So that's the follicular phase. That's the ovulatory phase. It's the time when you are, it's like, if you think about seasons, that's the time of summer. Everything is in full bloom. If you think about it biologically, that's when you're primed for conception, right? Whether if you want to conceive or not, that's when you're going to be your body is going to exude pheromones to attract a mate. So many clients tell me, my husband knows better when I'm cycling. It's like, he's just so attracted to, yeah, exactly. He's just so much more attracted to me. My skin is more glowing. My body is more kind of like, inviting, I guess. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So that's the phase of ovulation. In terms of exercise, go for it, girl. Like high intensity, Orange Theory, CrossFit, whatever it is that you want, this is the time to rock it at the gym or, whatever your exercise or, routine is. In terms of food, this is the time when actually, because the body is ready to, for conception, if you think about this in terms of energy and how much energy it requires a lot. And so you need to be like I mentioned, I teach my clients intuitive eating, right? Because I want them to really not think about food so much, because this is like the decision fatigue around food. It's like, oh my gosh, for me, it was exhausting. So what I've learned is to really tune into my body so that I don't have to do a lot of thinking. But this framework helps me to just make, the right choices whenever I just kind of slip off the track, right? But you would see that this is a time when the body needs mostly food that is not cooked, right? So greens, like I mentioned, and it begins in the follicular phase. Green juices, green smoothies, berries, food, salads. Just if you have like a salad with a little bit of protein for dinner, and you feel like it's enough. Like during the phase of ovulation, I feel like my needs for food is so much less than usually, and that's how it should be. Right? Because the body is already engaged in using your energy for something else. And that's totally normal. So don't like stuff yourself. And yes, emotional eating and all those things are a thing. But when you understand how your body is designed biologically, it's a process. I'm not going to lie. When I work with clients, it takes 6 months to transform from, wherever you are in your, healing journey. But over time, what happens is it's so much empowering. Like it's so empowering. And I believe that those are the things that our girls, our daughters need to learn in, in how they're called sex ed classes. They're called differently in Canada, but this is what I think girls and women around the world need, just this education to understand ourselves better. Because what I see, I've seen it from myself and I see it from my daughters as well. There is this tendency to associate females with, being hysterical, being crazy, being like overboard, being overwhelmed and, cray. It's like, no, it's just that we need to understand that because our energy changes throughout the month, our hormones change. Biologically, there's so much different things that happen in the body. And so how can I take care of myself? And how can I stop feeling guilty and stop feeling shamed for who I am and how I be in the world? And instead really just give myself what my body needs, whether it's the right kind of food, the right kind of movement, the right kind of, interaction in the world, and so on and so forth. So that's the ovulation. Do you want to ask something?
I was just going to say that I totally agree with that. I feel like there's a lot of shame around just cycles and periods and hormones in general. And I know personally, like growing up in the Midwest, you don't talk about periods, you don't talk about hormones, you don't talk about like any of that stuff, right? And so it's like I was raised to suppress all of those things. And so rediscovering like what my body is and what it can do for me and how to support that. You know, we're not crazy like that. Excuse me. Like you were saying, like it's so incredible that Mother Nature has designed us perfectly. And to learn to relearn that, to relearn to trust our own instincts, our own intuition, our gut, it's just, I find it all fascinating. But I do believe that our society is set up to suppress women in that sense, where like we don't talk about these things, or like you are crazy if you have everything's PMS, or you know what I mean. So
because you need to remember this. First of all, we live in a patriarchal society. I mean, yes, we're shifting away from that, but still we do.
It's still very much so, yeah.
Yeah, it's still very much so. And we need to remember that a powerful woman, an empowered woman is a powerful woman. And for the sake of patriarchy, it's, not always in their benefit. Like I'm going to share with you, we talked about this a little bit before we hit record. Do you want to talk a little bit about feminism? And
I do. So let's finish up the last two.
Yes, it's really important.
And then let's get into that, because that's a whole nother can of worms that I want to open.
Yes.
So. I want
to let me open this shit. Okay. So we talked about ovulation. The next phase is, so you mentioned the PMS. The next phase is called the luteal phase. So that's roughly day 20 on, all the way to day 28. That is the time when women mostly my clients tell me that this is like the worst time of their cycle. The majority of women really struggle, whether it is PMS, whether it is debilitating, pain, whether it is, they get sick more during this time. Emotionally, that's when you might feel snappiest or snappier, short-tempered. That's when you don't want to engage. That's when, like, I know for me, that's when it's like, and it doesn't happen like abruptly. It's very gradual. Like God was gracious enough to do it like gracefully, slowly over time. So what happens is that I begin feeling like I need like those kids to be taken away from me, or else they're not safe.
That's me this week. I'm like, somebody take these children or we're not going to make it through the day.
Yes. That's when you might find yourself yelling more. That's when you might find yourself being more, tending to be more angry or raging. Now, I'm not saying that that's okay and that's how it should be. It's just that I want you to understand that because your hormone change, so what happens is estrogen drops, progesterone goes up. Because of that shift, that's how you're going to feel. Now, of course, it's absolutely essential for you to learn, emotional resilience, emotional skills, some emotional intelligence skills. Of course, you need to learn to meditate. You need to learn. This is the time when your inner mean girl is reawakened. Right? And it's normal that it's like, if you think about it, like from a spiritual perspective, that's how it should be. So remember we talked about the follicular phase, that's when you're inner teenager. So that's like the younger version of you, not the younger version, like the younger adult in you is being reawakened. So you know how teenagers are like super fun and outgoing, but also they have a tendency to do like stupid things. So that's the energy of the follicular phase. Versus in the luteal phase, that's when your inner toddler is being reawakened. Very often, it's like you might have a tendency to like tantrum and to like say, no, I don't want to, right? And like again,
this week, I am a toddler. This week, I am throwing a fit about everything, but I'm having fun. But I'm also throwing a fit on the inside.
Yeah, so that's normal. But having said that, part of this, part of the self-care is to learn, mindfulness, and to learn to create, structure for yourself so that you feel held. And so all those things, of course, they have, there is a way how to take care of yourself, especially during this phase. This is the time when I teach my clients to parent themselves and learn how to mother themselves and learn how to give to yourself those things you wish you had gotten from, maybe your mom, or maybe, the people who were taking care of you when you were growing up. So that's the time when this is reawakened. And it's essential for us to let this be. So whether it is, in your journaling practice, or maybe your meditation practice, or even, talking over this in therapy or in coaching sessions, it's really important to let this out, because the better you understand yourself, the easier your life would be, the simpler your life would be, right? Because you're not constantly going to be in this loop and this self-sabotaging kind of, act of living. I remember I was in that all the time until I learned, I'm still learning how to negotiate with my inner critic and how to just, give to myself the compassion that I craved so much when I was younger. So that's the phase, that's the luteal phase. In terms of food, that's when you might feel like, again, intuitively, the desire to eat foods that are more towards a comfort food. Now, when I say comfort, I don't mean junk and burgers and that kind of stuff. I mean foods that are maybe, cooked in a slow cooker, soups, dishes that are cooked longer versus, you see how different it is from the follicular and the ovulatory phase. It's completely different, which is why following, a food dogma, let's say, drink celery juice every morning, for me, it doesn't work, because I always slipped. It's just, I couldn't stick to anything. And then I understood that it happens because I'm a female and my body just doesn't want to eat anything cold. And that's how it should be. Actually, in traditional Chinese medicine, they teach women to abstain from anything cold during that month, including the way to dress. So in the wintertime, Sasha, I'm seeing what you're wearing. You might notice yourself intuitively craving more like turtlenecks and more like, right? So that's right. So that's because your body is already exuding energy and it's preparing for menstruation. And so you want to preserve your energy. So whether it's eating foods that are warm, drinking, not drinking, cold water or anything cold, but actually, drinking more, teas and herbal teas and like just warmer beverages. So that type of thing. In terms of exercise and moving your body, you might feel this, like I said, there's this crossover date between ovulation into the luteal phase, when you would just feel like, oh, I just don't feel like it. I just don't feel like it. It's like when one of my clients said, Dorit, thank you so much for giving me permission to skip my Zumba class tonight. And I'm like, yes, this is how it should be. And again, it's not to say that being feminine, it's being lazy. Not at all. Because when you're supposed to, when you should, and you have the energy, you go for it, girl. And you're not going to, allow the inner chatter to keep you stuck and to keep you, to keep you closed and playing small. No. That's the time to play. But in the luteal phase, going all the way until menstruation, that's when you start to, you begin to slow down. And it's going to be done slowly over time. Okay.
I love this. And it's just giving yourself permission that like, it's okay to slow down, because then you're just ramping up for the next thing. It's like slow down to speed up, slow down to speed up.
Exactly.
And giving yourself permission and allowing yourself to like, maybe just go for a walk or maybe do some yoga. And like, it doesn't have to be so hard, go, balls to the wall 24/7, because that's when I believe we experience burnout, fatigue, brain fog, all of these things you were talking about in the beginning. And so it all just comes full circle. I love this. 100%.
Okay. Exactly. Yes. Burnout. That's exactly. Most women who come to me, they are healing from for whatever kind of burnout. It could be a mental burnout, it can be emotional burnout, it can be physical burnout. And yes, because the body communicates with us all the time, we just don't understand, right? So physical, especially physical symptoms, when the body manifests physical symptoms, like I mentioned in the beginning, thyroid conditions, right? So unbalanced thyroid, unbalanced hormones, acne, and just like aches and pains, and you're just you don't feel vital as a woman, and many of my clients are still in their late 30s, early 40s, like we're still young. So why does it happen? It happens because we don't live sustainably. Okay, so that's the luteal phase, and then the cycle culminates with menstruation, right? So menstruation is when you bleed, I bleed, we bleed, and it's the time for just really slowing it down. If you think about it spiritually, like that's the time to just do absolutely nothing. Now, I know what women are thinking, like, what do you mean? You know, my life is so busy. My life is so full. I can't slow down and just lay in bed and sleep, especially for us mamas, right? I get it. And again, as a wise woman who is craving and desiring to live a sustainable life, it's never about perfection. It's really about just the process and the progress of it. So even if you are incorporating this system, this framework, even just 1%, just 1% better, it's already going to feel so much better. So for example, let's talk practical. Let's say you are a woman who is restructuring and rearranging and learning, right? You're learning about this system and you are used to just, continue to go to the gym and continue your life. You work the same way you work, you drop the kids off, you pick them up. Like your life is really pretty much the same throughout the entire cycle. So now you know that, I can actually start thinking about the daily activities that I have and kind of like match them with the cycles and like choose when it's the right time to do them. So for example, if you are in menstruation, and that's the kind of mom that I used to be, I could not bear the fact that because of me, my kids are missing out. That was so dumb. Like when my kids had, and I have 3 daughters, and they all go to school. And so they go to a Hebrew school. And so for us, birthdays are always on Sundays. And so for me, it was very common to have like 3 different birthdays all in the same day, sometimes, in the same time. So I was like the taxi driver. Now that's fine when you're in ovulation and you feel like you're on the top of the world. You feel so powerful and you have all the energy. But when I'm in menstruation, I am like, I don't care. Good for you. You have a birthday. I'm going to try to get somebody else to pick you up and to drop, to pick you up and drop you off. But if I can't, then you're not going. And I'm totally fine with it. That kind of mindset. And again, it's not to make my kids' life miserable. It's just that I want to teach them that mommy is a person. And mommy is prioritizing herself, and I'm going to really make an effort to make this happen for you. But if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't. And I'm not going to,
yes, there's no strings attached to it, right? Like if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And like giving yourself again, that permission to like slow down. And I don't have to be everything to everybody, because we're teaching the next generation that is okay. And that what better way to teach our kids than to be that role model for them. So I love that. I love that.
And also this is really important. And I've had I've learned that from a fascinating book. If you guys are interested, please go ahead and grab Wild Power by Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer. They were actually guests on my podcast. It's episode 142. Definitely, Sasha, if you can link up this episode. These women are amazing, and they've created this framework which they call the menstrual cycle awareness, and like really the spiritual aspect of menstruation and our menstruality, how they call it. And it's really, I love how she talks about our relationship with motherhood and how we feel like as a mother, it's really all about sacrifice. And actually it isn't. it's really important for us as mothers to give ourselves the permission to step away from mothering for just a little while. And again, this is where this is brilliant, right? Because you don't want to step away for too long. And even by stepping away doesn't mean giving them away or like going to a hotel. Of course, if you can do that, please, by all means. I sometimes do that, but it's not always sustainable. It's just, let's say for me, it's communicating with my husband, with my partner, that I just need some time to be alone. So I go upstairs and I just close my door and I'm by myself. A lot of women tell me that it's actually, if you guys feel like you relate to that, please do let me know about this, because I'm just fascinated by how much we women are afraid to admit those things. But a lot of my clients share with me very vulnerably that they just wish they had a bedroom all for themselves. So they just wish not to share a bedroom for just a couple of days. And that's the reason, that's actually how it's supposed to be. Like if you think about ancient times and the times of the red tent, women who were bleeding, it's not that they were, please don't be mistaken, they weren't sent to that tent. No, that's wrong. These women created the red tent for themselves so they can step away. And the beauty was that because it was tribal living, they knew that somebody else will take care of the kids, somebody else will feed their family, somebody else would take care of their stuff while they go. Yes.
We need the red tent again.
Right. But this is one of the mistakes, and I think it's tied beautifully into the next point that we wanted to talk about. But this is one of the mistakes that we tend to see, and I see it all the time because, I mean, I follow people who empower women, and they talk about this all the time, how it's the men who send the women away. It's actually wrong. It's actually wrong. We women were the ones who decided that we needed that. And those systems were created to accommodate our needs for rest and restoration and just rejuvenation, right? Because the last person I want to connect with when I menstruate is my husband. I don't want to. Actually, something really brilliant that I read in one traditional Chinese medicine book, they were talking about the energy of menstruation, and how when we women menstruate, that's actually the time when we let go of all the like negative energy that we're holding onto our bodies. So when that is being sent off the body, it's like you're cleansing. So why on earth would you want to engage in intercourse? I mean, I personally think that it's wrong, because it's kind of, I mean, it's a big topic and I don't want to, to confuse your listeners, but I highly, highly encourage women not to engage in intercourse while you're menstruating. That's not to say that you can't have sex. Definitely use your hands, use your other holds, but just don't allow this energy to be passed on to your partner, because a lot of women also then feel, and again, those are things that are very subtle. Unless you have this deep connection with yourself, then but the majority of us, let's be honest, we're not taught this stuff, and we kind of think that it's woo-woo and it's like it's all fairy tales, right? In reality, this is actually, energy is a thing. If you can't see something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So many of these couples who engage in intercourse during menstruation, what I hear from these women is that they just have like their relationship is constantly glitching, and they feel like they don't feel they want to engage with their partners. Especially for example, what I see is during the times when it's allowed, so it's follicular phase and in the ovulatory phase, then they don't want to do it. It's like energetically something doesn't work. And there is a process for healing that can be done for that. But I just want you to start kind of like connecting the pieces. There is energy that you are letting go of when you menstruate. So don't interrupt it. Give yourself the permission to just slow down, let it out, bleed on it when you need to, and just move on with your cycle. Okay, that's it. In terms of food, comfort foods, very similar to the luteal phase foods. So you would crave things like chilies, again, warm foods, hot foods. In the summertime, what I notice, even it's summertime and it's hot, I still want to be under my thick blanket. It's like, those weighted blankets. That's because, again, the energy, your body is going through really big bodily events that require a lot of energy. So just like cruise with that. Don't, fight against it. If you don't want to exercise, you can do, light yoga. You can definitely go for a walk. Those are the kind of things that you want to do in terms of movement. But if you don't feel like it, then don't. And that's totally fine. And that's the cycle. How amazing is that?
It is. It's incredible. And I knew this on a very surface level. And I, as you're talking about this, I feel like I'm diving deeper into my own intuitive senses, because I know that I do a lot of these things. I just don't have conscious awareness of it, right? Like even the wearing the sweater or the slower movement this week. Like last week I was going to CrossFit every day, and I found I was wearing t-shirts. And then this week I'm like, I don't want to go to CrossFit. I just want to wear sweatshirts and cozy things. And you just go with that. You don't question it. You just do it. And it's learning to trust that inner guide versus putting society's expectations on however you're feeling. So I feel like I'm doing this in an intuitive sense, but it's nice to bring that conscious awareness to it. And I feel like a lot of listeners will relate to this and want to dive deeper into that. So, and I know we had touched on a little bit, I know we're kind of coming up on time, but let's talk about, for the next 5 or 10 minutes, the male patriarchy and that whole tent thing, where I know a lot of times people are like, oh, send the women away. When in reality, it was women coming together in a community to where they could have that space for one another. And I even know in society today, I feel still we're working on it, but I still feel suppressed in a sense that we can't openly talk about these things without being shamed for it, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your experience is, maybe I just opened a whole nother can of worms, but I do want to challenge that whole thought process and what's the future vision of it. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I love this question. So, okay, to answer this question, I'm going to say 2 things. Number one, I have to, the listeners need to know this about me, because whatever I'm going to share, it's totally biased. It's my own personal opinion. I am not here to, to be like a thought leader and yes, everybody think like me. No, this is my own personal opinion coming from where I come from. So I was born Jewish and I was raised Jewish. So in our tradition, it's very similar to Christianity. So the rigidness of it, it's, and the dogma of it is very similar. And I really truly believe that, this is where I'm I have to be careful, because I don't want.
You don't have to hesitate. If people will take it, however they perceive this is their own judgment thing.
Yes.
And they're going to have to work through that on their own.
I'll share why I hesitate, because I've been on, other podcasts where women invited me, as the voice of feminism. And that's totally fine, right? Because it sounds like, oh my gosh, this is such a feministic idea. And it is, but it also isn't. So I don't come from the place of hardcore feminism, in the sense that, like we talked about this earlier, what I believe, the pure liberal feminism is, and I might be wrong, but from what I see and what I read out there, it just